a disgrace to this family.
Have you ever believed that your best friend could never hurt you? Abeni did, until she started dying, one teacup at a time. The shocking truth? Zahara, her childhood best friend, had been secretly poisoning her for over 2 years. Not for money, not out of revenge, but because of a twisted love for Abeni's husband, and a burning jealousy she carried for years. This isn't fiction. This real-life case shook the media across Africa, known as the Bloody Betrayal of a Best Friend. If you stay through this video, you'll discover how someone can hide pure evil behind kindness, the silent signs of emotional manipulation, and how a 6-year-old girl became the voice that exposed a killer. Imani, Abeni's daughter, lived in silent terror. She was starved, threatened, and abused because she knew too much. But it was one scream, caught by a baby monitor, that finally exposed everything. If you think your past with someone is enough to trust them today, think again. Because sometimes the person who smiles at you the most is the one killing you the slowest. The rain fell like silver needles, slicing through the thick summer night. Thunder growled low in the distance, muffled by the rustle of leaves and the squeals of 2 young girls sprinting through puddles on bare feet. Their laughter echoed down the alleyways of the old neighborhood, where rusted tin roofs clinked beneath the downpour, and the scent of wet hibiscus mixed with red dust. Abeni's hair clung to her face, dark coils dripping, her white shirt soaked and glowing beneath flickers of lightning. She clutched a shivering tabby cat to her chest, its fur plastered against her arms, its eyes wide with confusion and fear. Zahara ran beside her, panting, a step behind. "Wait up," Zahara called, her voice sharp, edged with breathlessness. Abeni didn't stop. She pushed open the wooden gate of her house with her foot, cradled the trembling kitten tighter, and disappeared inside. Zahara stood outside, chest heaving, water streaming down her arms. Her fists were clenched. A woman from across the street, wrapped in a plastic shawl, clapped her hands. That Abeni, always brave like her mother, not even scared of thunder or rooftop heights. Others joined in the chorus. "She saved that cat like it was nothing. That's our girl." Zahara turned her head slightly. The rain made it hard to tell if her cheeks were wet from the sky or something else. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't say a word. Later that night, in a bedroom lit only by the blue glow of a dying flashlight, Zahara lay on her back, staring at the ceiling. The creak of the fan overhead mimicked a heartbeat, slow and steady. From outside, the sound of frogs croaked in the ditches, joined by the patter of lingering rain. Her lips barely moved. "One day," she whispered, "everything they praise her for will belong to me." No one heard her but the shadows on the wall. At school, Abeni was a magnet of attention. Teachers called on her not just because she raised her hand, but because she asked questions that made even the headmaster pause. She shared her lunch with children who forgot theirs. She stayed behind to help clean the chalkboards. The staff adored her. Zahara was smart too. Some would say sharper, but her efforts seemed to slip beneath the surface like stones tossed into a pond. The ripples never lasted long. Once, during a math lesson, Zahara solved a complex problem quicker than anyone else. The teacher blinked, nodded, and said, "Good," then turned right to Abeni to explain the same problem to the rest of the class. "See how Abeni explains it?" The teacher smiled. "She's a born leader." Zahara stared at her notebook, lines trembling beneath her pen. The award ceremony came at the end of the term. A wide stage had been erected in the schoolyard, draped with faded banners and crepe paper. The children sat in rows, buzzing with anticipation. Parents fanned themselves with folded programs. The sun glared down, hot and unapologetic. Abeni was called to the center. She walked with quiet confidence, eyes wide, hands straight at her sides. The principal bent to shake her hand, holding up a framed certificate with gold trim. "This," he said to the audience, "is the pride of our neighborhood. Abeni Nwosu." Thunderous applause. Behind her, Zahara stood with a thinner certificate, her name spelled slightly wrong in faint ink. She smiled for the camera, but her hands gripped the paper until it curled. Later that day, an old man, the same neighbor who'd praised Abeni for rescuing the cat, paused on his porch, watching the children walk by. He sipped his tea, squinting through the steam. "Mark my words," he muttered to no one in particular. "That other one, something in her eyes don't sit right. Sweet smile, but there's silence behind it." Even the rain seemed to agree, returning that evening with soft, steady tapping on rooftops. That night, Zahara stood barefoot in the rain again, right where it had all begun. Her school shoes dangled from her fingers, her teeth clenched tight. She tilted her head to the sky, letting the water soak through her braids. And then she bit down on her lip, so hard the copper tang of blood mixed with rainwater. From behind clenched teeth, she spoke with a voice too calm for a child. "One day," she said, "they'll chant my name." She didn't blink. She didn't smile. She just stood there as the rain swallowed her whole. The books hit the floor with a thud that echoed too loud for a library. Paperbacks fanned across the tiles like a quiet explosion. Abeni gasped, crouching to gather them, palms fumbling, cheeks burning red. The room smelled of old paper and ink, thick with the kind of silence that only libraries could hold. And then, his hand, one long, elegant hand, reached out, brushing hers as it helped scoop up a stack of books. She looked up. The boy's eyes were the color of burnt honey, dark, steady, unreadable. A beat passed, and in that moment, time bent. The whispers of turning pages faded. Her breath caught in her throat. "You okay?" His voice was warm, not too deep yet, with a slight rasp like he'd been running. Abeni blinked. Yes, thank you." He smiled, one side of his mouth lifting slower than the other. "You like The Fire of the Mountain? That's one of my favorites." She glanced down. It was one of the books she'd dropped. He recognized it from the cover. Her fingers curled slightly around the spine. "I haven't read it yet," she said quietly, "but the title pulled me in." "Good choice." He held out the last book. "Kwame." She took it from him. "Abeni." Their fingers didn't touch again, but the air between them hummed like it remembered. The next time they met was by the vending machine near the biology lab. He bought 2 bottled waters and handed her one without asking. She said thank you and tried not to smile too wide. They began to talk about books, about the price of fried plantains on campus, about how the electrical outlets in the girls' dorm buzzed at night like a wasp's nest. And soon they were everywhere together, on library benches, on the low stone wall near the koi pond, walking between lectures, sometimes without speaking, just walking. The campus changed around them, trees blooming, students rushing, lecturers shouting at latecomers, but the space between Abeni and Kwame remained unshaken, like a glass dome of stillness. Zahara noticed. She always noticed. She didn't say anything at first. She would laugh along when Abeni gushed about how Kwame remembered her favorite tea or fixed her broken headphone jack. Zahara would raise an eyebrow playfully and joke, "You've caught yourself a prince, haven't you?" and when she accidentally bumped into Kwame alone near the student cafe, she leaned on the rail beside him, eyes curious. "So," Zahara said, tilting her head, "are you two official now? Or just friends with meaningful eye contact?" Kwame chuckled. "She's something special." "I see that," she said. "Abeni deserves someone who gets her." Then she smiled. Sweet, supportive. But it didn't reach her eyes. Later that night, Zahara sat on her bed in the glow of her laptop screen. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before they began to type. The username she created was simple, untraceable. Just a few numbers, a fake name, no photo. She opened a direct message window. "Hey, you probably don't know me, but I saw your girlfriend with another guy yesterday. Thought you should know." She paused, then hit send. The next day, nothing changed. Kwame was still there, still laughing with Abeni under the flame tree, still walking her home, still carrying her books. Zahara checked the inbox again. The message was seen. No reply. She created another account, tried again. This time, she made it more flirtatious, dropped a subtle compliment, said he looked good in blue. He blocked the account. Her jaw clenched. She opened a third one. This time she got personal. "You don't need her. Girls like her always choose attention over love. I'd treat you better." Kwame replied, "Please don't contact me again." Zahara stared at the screen. Her fingers dug into her thigh. She didn't type anything else, but the silence grew thick, pressing against the corners of her chest like smoke. Days passed. Weeks. Abeni kept smiling, unaware. Her eyes glowed more now, her laughter softer. Kwame had that effect on her. He calmed her storms. And when he placed his hand on the small of her back before they crossed the street, Zahara noticed that too. One afternoon, he invited her to the garden behind the old faculty building. It was nearly empty, just a few benches, a dying hibiscus bush, and the soft sound of a distant fountain. Abeni wore a pale blue dress, the kind that caught the wind like silk. Her hands trembled as he took them. He didn't kneel, didn't need to. Kwame held her hands like he was anchoring her to the earth. "I've never believed in perfect timing," he said, eyes locked on hers. "But I do believe in choosing. And I choose you." From his pocket, he pulled a velvet box. Inside, a thin gold band with a single stone, small and glowing like the moon caught in a drop of water. Abeni's breath caught. She nodded, too choked to speak. Cheers erupted from the bushes. Two of their friends popped out with phones and confetti. Laughter, hugs, tears. But off to the side, just beyond the edge of the stone path, stood Zahara. She clapped. She smiled. But her fingers were clenched so tightly that her nails left small crescent moons in her palms. That night, she stood in front of her mirror, the lights off, only the glow from her laptop illuminating her face. The words were still on the screen, her messages, her attempts, her ignored pleas. She reached for a pair of nail clippers on the desk, ran her thumb over the blade, then dropped it. She turned off the screen. She smiled at her reflection, wide and bright, but her eyes didn't move. Her reflection felt like a stranger. Behind her, thunder rumbled, the same way it had the night Abeni rescued that kitten. Some memories never drowned. Zahara turned from the mirror and whispered to the dark, "If you want to keep something, you have to take it before it belongs to someone else." Outside, the first raindrop hit the window. She didn't flinch. She just watched it slide down the glass, slow and deliberate, carving its way through the dust. The lace of Abeni's wedding veil caught the wind as she stepped out of the limousine. For a second, it fluttered around her like wings, soft and trembling, as if it wanted to pull her away. But she didn't notice. Her eyes were fixed ahead, on the archway of flowers, on the guests turning to look. on the man waiting at the end of the aisle. Kwame stood tall beneath a white canopy, gold embroidery catching the afternoon sun. He looked like he was holding his breath. A hush fell over the courtyard, broken only by the faint trickle of a water fountain and the muted clicks of phone cameras. Zahara stood near the front, one step behind the bridesmaids, in a fitted lavender dress that matched the others in color, not in spirit. Her smile was perfect. Straight teeth, soft lips, not too wide. She had practiced it, but the corners of her mouth ached, and no one noticed her hands, the way her thumbs rubbed over her knuckles like a nervous tick, or the way her eyes lingered too long on the lace, on the curve of Abeni's back, on the moment that wasn't hers. The ceremony was short, sweet, vows spoken with trembling voices, rings exchanged with shaking fingers, laughter when Kwame forgot which hand, applause when Abeni choked up saying, "Forever." Even Zahara clapped, wiping away a theatrical tear with the edge of her shawl. Then came the reception. The lights dimmed, casting warm amber over the banquet hall. Glasses clinked. Children ran between tables. The band played old love songs under paper lanterns. Speeches were made, blessings offered, hands shaken. Kwam's family, dignified, well-dressed, generous, gifted them a new home, a white bungalow on the hill, solar-powered, with a security system and garden views, complete with modern baby monitors, a kitchen that smelled of cedar, and a front porch large enough for rocking chairs and dreams. Abeni cried when they handed her the deed. "Ah, you deserve it," Kwame whispered, pulling her close. Across the room, Zahara toasted. "To the golden couple," she said, raising her glass. "May your love never rust." Her tone sparkled, but her gaze didn't. Weeks passed. The house welcomed them with quiet warmth. The garden bloomed with hibiscus and marigold. Abeni filled the kitchen with cinnamon and ginger, with the smell of fresh bread and roasted yams. Kwame painted the nursery pale yellow. Abeni's belly grew round. She took to singing while washing dishes, while folding clothes, while reading baby books on the couch. Her voice was soft, untrained, but it wrapped the rooms like warm fog. At night, they lay curled together, Abeni's hand on her belly, Kwame's hand on hers. They whispered names. They imagined futures. They didn't see Zahara watching. She came often, always with gifts, herbal teas, shea butter, books for new mothers. She offered to help organize the baby's shower. She took photos of Abeni's bump and pasted them in a handmade scrapbook. She baked sugar cookies in the shape of stars. Everyone said what a good friend she was. "She's like family," Abeni said. But Zahara's hands always lingered a moment too long on the door handles, the baby monitor, the pantry shelves. She took quiet interest in the medicine cabinet. She offered to watch Abeni nap and wash the dishes herself. And when no one was looking, she stole quiet moments, holding the baby monitor in her palm, watching the red light blink. When Abeni went into labor, it was a slow storm. Water broke at dawn. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and lavender, the kind pumped through the maternity ward vents to calm nerves. Abeni screamed only once, short, sharp, and fierce, and Kwame gripped her hand until his fingers turned pale. They named her Imani, tiny, wide-eyed, skin like coffee and milk, hair already curling in tight black loops. Kwame cried. Abeni didn't stop staring. When they brought her home, Zahara was already waiting on the porch, holding a banner that said, "Welcome, baby girl," in gold letters. She held Imani like glass, rocked her in slow circles, hummed songs she didn't remember learning. Her smile was perfect, but the camera doorbell blinked silently. Later that week, Abeni found Zahara in the nursery. The lights were off. The window cracked open. Imani was asleep in the crib, swaddled tight. Zahara stood over her, unmoving. Abeni watched for a moment before speaking. "You okay?" Zahara turned, startled, then laughed. "Of course. Just looking at her. She's beautiful." Abeni nodded, but something in her stomach knotted. A month later, at the welcome party for Imani, the living room was filled with color and cake, music, perfume, people admiring the baby's cheeks, passing her from arm to arm. Zahara arrived in a pale pink blouse and silver earrings shaped like feathers. She brought a white tin box tied with red string. Inside, organic calming tea for postnatal stress. "Completely natural," Zahara said, handing it to Abeni with a smile. "It helped my cousin. You'll sleep better." The smell was light, floral, pleasant. Abeni brewed a cup that night, warmed her hands on the mug, took small sips. Kwame rubbed her feet on the couch, the baby monitor softly hissing in the background. And in that living room full of gentle noise, the camera over the front door caught a moment it wouldn't forget. Zahara standing in the hallway, out of place, looking at Abeni holding the baby, her face blank, her eyes sharp. No one noticed the smile had vanished. 2 weeks passed. Abeni grew tired, more than usual. Her head hurt often, her stomach cramped. The world sometimes tilted too fast when she stood. But she blamed the new schedule, the crying at night, the nursing, the endless laundry. She drank the tea every other evening. Zahara kept bringing fresh tins. One morning, while dressing Imani, Abeni dropped the bottle of baby lotion. Her hands had started to tremble. A faint rash had bloomed along her collarbone. She brushed it off. Kwame noticed, asked if she was eating enough. She said she was fine. She wasn't. One afternoon, Zahara offered to hold Imani while Abeni napped. Alone in the kitchen, Zahara stood beside the baby monitor and whispered softly to the air, "You don't even know how lucky you are, little one." The baby stared, blinking. Zahara smiled. That night, Abeni dropped the tea mug. Porcelain shattered across the floor, sharp against the tile. She clutched the sink, coughing, vision swimming. Her chest ached. Her hands were shaking again. She looked up at Zahara standing in the doorway. Her friend didn't move, didn't reach out, just stood there, watching. The baby monitor blinked once, and Zahara smiled, but only with her lips. The teacup slipped from Abeni's hand before she could scream. It struck the tile and burst open like a blossom of ceramic and steam, amber liquid splattering across her bare feet. Her breath caught mid-cough, chest heaving, eyes wide. Her fingers trembled violently, as though they no longer belonged to her. The floor was cold beneath her soles. The house was quiet, too quiet. Across the kitchen, Zahara stood by the doorway, holding a folded dish towel, her silhouette cut against the soft lamplight, unmoving. Her voice came gentle. "Are you okay?" Abeni's head turned slowly, like something was stuck in her neck. Her lips moved, but no sound followed. She dropped to her knees to gather the shards. The tea burned where it kissed the cuts on her palm. She didn't flinch. Zahara stepped forward, took the towel, and knelt beside her. "Let me help." But Abeni didn't look at her. She stared into the puddle on the floor, seeing something that wasn't there. Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. "My chest hurts." Zahara tilted her head. "You're just tired. Postpartum exhaustion. Happens to all mothers." Abeni nodded, but her hands kept shaking. That night, Zahara offered to rock the baby so Abeni could rest. She brewed a fresh cup of herbal tea, new tin, same red ribbon. The label read, "Soothing Blend, Wild Hibiscus and Lavender." Abeni hesitated at first, then drank. In the dark, she lay curled on the bed, her body heavy, her vision swimming. The baby monitor on the nightstand blinked softly. Somewhere in the static, a lullaby hummed. She thought she heard her name, or maybe she dreamed it. The next morning, Kwame found her slumped on the bathroom floor, pale, drenched in sweat, breathing shallow. He rushed her to the clinic. They ran tests, blood work, blood pressure, ECG, everything. The nurse apologized after the results. Nothing alarming, just stress. You need rest, ma'am. Abeni blinked slowly, but I feel like I'm disappearing. No fever, no infection, no sign of poisoning. The doctor smiled. You're just overwhelmed. Zahara sat in the waiting room with Imani, rocking the baby and offering soft reassurances. New moms always panic, she told Kwame later. It's the hormones, the anxiety, especially when you don't sleep. Kwame agreed. He held Abeni tighter that night, brushing damp hair from her temples. Zahara watched them from the hallway, her expression unreadable. The next day, Abeni spilled the tea again. The same shattering sound, the same trembling fingers. This time Zahara rushed in, but Abeni didn't meet her eyes. I don't want it anymore, she said quietly. Zahara laughed. I'll make you a different blend. No, Abeni whispered, I don't want it at all. That night, Zahara left the tin on the kitchen table anyway. The house shifted. The baby cried more often. Abeni's eyes sank deeper into their sockets. Her clothes hung looser. Her skin felt like paper beneath Kwame's fingers. But the blood test said she was fine. She was not fine. One afternoon, Zahara returned from the market with groceries. Cassava, beans, fresh mint. She whistled as she unpacked the bags. Abeni sat at the kitchen table, staring at a blank spot on the wall. Come sit, Zahara said cheerfully. I'll make soup. Abeni didn't move. You trust me, right? Zahara asked. Her smile flickered. Abeni didn't answer. In the weeks that followed, Zahara began staying over more often. At first it made sense. Kwame was back at work, and the baby needed attention. Zahara helped with diapers, with feedings, with midnight walks across the living room. But slowly, quietly, she began to insert herself into the rhythm of the house. She started choosing the baby's outfits. She moved her toothbrush into the guest bathroom. She began referring to Imani as our girl, Abeni noticed. But her voice had grown softer. Her strength had thinned to whispers. She wrote things down instead of saying them, scribbled on the back of receipts, the corner of napkins, the edge of baby wipes, things like, I feel hollow. It burns when I drink. She watches me when I sleep. But the scraps kept disappearing. One morning, Abeni decided to leave. She packed a small bag, just diapers, formula, one pair of shoes. She dressed Imani in silence. The baby cooed as the zipper clicked shut. But Zahara was already at the door. Going somewhere? She asked. Voice flat. Abeni didn't answer. Zahara smiled, stepped aside and gestured to the hallway. You forgot your tea. Abeni blinked. Her breath caught in her throat. Zahara moved closer. You're not well enough to be outside. I need air. You need rest. I need to go. Zahara stared at her, then leaned in and whispered in her ear. You're not going anywhere, Abeni. She placed a hand gently on the baby's head and smiled. That night, Abeni didn't sleep. She clutched Imani to her chest, her heart pounding so loud it drowned out the sound of the monitor. She didn't drink the tea. She poured it down the drain and watched it swirl like poison disappearing into nothing. She made a decision. She would tell Kwame everything, every suspicion, every shadow. But the next morning, Kwame had left early for work. Zahara served breakfast with a smile. That afternoon, Abeni collapsed. Her legs gave out near the nursery door. She hit the ground hard. Her breath came in gasps. She reached for the wall, crawled. Zahara knelt beside her with terrifying calm. "I told you," she whispered, brushing Abeni's hair back like a mother would. "You're not strong enough, but I am. I'm strong enough to take care of everything." Abeni choked. She tried to speak, but Zahara placed a finger gently on her lips. "Rest now." The doorbell rang. Zahara's expression flickered. She stood, wiped her hands, and walked toward the front door. As she disappeared around the corner, Abeni looked toward the baby monitor. The red light blinked. The blinking meant sound. It had captured her fall. It had captured Zahara's voice. She reached for it, fingers shaking. Then darkness took her. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. It drummed against the roof like a warning. In the living room, the couch was still covered in white flowers, the kind that smell too sweet when left too long in stagnant water. Condolences, arrangements, lilies that died before they opened. Abeni was gone. The funeral had ended just before sunset. Men in black coats, women in muted colors holding back tears. A pastor who hadn't known her spoke soft platitudes. Imani didn't cry. She was too young, too small, eyes blinking, trying to make sense of absence. She kept looking at the door, expecting her mother to come back in, but it was Zahara who held her now. The living room was filled with guests. Voices blurred. Mourners hugged Kwame. Some offered scriptures, others just silence. Zahara moved through the room like vapor, soft, ever-present, everywhere. She carried Imani gently, humming low, her hand cradling the back of the baby's head. "She was like a sister to me," Zahara whispered to an auntie. "I'll never forgive myself for not seeing the signs." She looked down at Imani. "But I'll take care of her. I promise." Kwame heard her, and something in his chest shifted. He nodded, grateful, lost. He didn't notice the way Zahara's eyes gleamed when they met his, just for a moment. By the end of the week, Zahara had moved in. She didn't ask. She just stayed. Kwame was too tired to question anything. His eyes were dull from grief. His footsteps slow. He barely spoke at dinner. Sometimes she'd find him standing in the hallway, staring at Abeni's shoes near the door. Like if he waited long enough, she'd walk in and ask him to move them. Zahara took over the house. She cleaned, but not Abeni's closet. She cooked, but never Abeni's favorite meals. She took down the framed photo of their wedding from the mantel and placed it inside a drawer. She needs a fresh start, she told herself. So do we. She started dressing Imani in muted browns and grays instead of the pastel dresses Abeni had loved. She trimmed the child's curls without asking. When Kwame noticed, he frowned. "I thought Abeni wanted her to grow them out. They were getting tangled," Zahara said too quickly. "She cried every time I combed it." He didn't push. He hadn't been sleeping. At night, he lay curled on Abeni's side of the bed, holding her old scarf to his face. The baby monitor still hummed on the nightstand. Down the hall, Zahara rocked Imani to sleep in the nursery, but not always gently. Sometimes, when the house was dark and the neighborhood still, her voice changed. It flattened. She'd lean close to the baby's ear. "You remember your mother?" she'd whisper. She didn't fight hard enough. "That's why she's not here." Imani would blink, quiet, alert. "But I'm still here." The baby never cried when Zahara held her. She froze. She went silent. In the daytime, things seemed normal enough. Zahara would stroll Imani down the block, wave at neighbors, bring casseroles to Kwame's mother. She smiled. She sang. She looked like a blessing, but behind closed doors, she began to slip. She stopped heating Imani's bottles, stopped washing the child's clothes. She placed the high chair too close to the stove, left the front gate open. Once she gave Imani spoiled fruit. When the child vomited, she told Kwame it was a virus. He nodded, but the doubt started whispering. He noticed bruises once, small ones, barely visible, on Imani's arm. Faint blue smudges that didn't match her crawling pattern. Zahara said it happened during play, that she fell against the crib. "I think we need a break," Kwame said one evening gently. "You've done so much. Maybe my mom could come stay for a while." Zahara smiled, but her eyes went dark. "I've given up everything for this child," she said softly. "For you, for Abeni. I haven't asked for anything. And now you want me gone?" "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." She turned her back. That night, she rocked Imani harder than usual, rougher. The baby whimpered. Zahara leaned in again, her breath warm. "I told you I'd take care of you, but if you ever tell, I'll make you disappear just like I did her." Imani trembled. The monitor blinked. The static captured everything. The next morning, a neighbor knocked. "I heard crying late," she said. "Is everything okay?" Zahara smiled at the door. "She's teething, poor thing's in pain." But behind her, Imani sat on the floor with an empty bowl beside her. Her diaper sagged. Her face looked pale. Kwame returned early that day. He saw the untouched formula, the fly buzzing near the fruit bowl, the baby asleep in a damp onesie. He stood in the doorway, watching. Zahara entered the room, didn't see him. She scooped Imani up, bounced her a bit, then dropped her back down roughly. The child whimpered. I said quiet. Kwame stepped forward. Zahara spun. Her face changed instantly. "Darling," she smiled, breathless. "I didn't see you." He didn't say anything. That night, he searched through Abeni's things. He opened drawers she hadn't opened in months, and in the back of her closet, tucked behind a box of baby shoes, he found it. A white plastic bottle, labeled vitamins, postpartum. He opened it. Inside was a fine powder, not pills. He blinked. His hands shook. Zahara knocked gently on the door behind him. "You okay?" He turned. She stood in her robe holding a cup. "Tea?" she asked. "You look like you need it." He didn't answer, just stared at the cup, then at her, then back at the bottle. "I think we should talk," he said. Her smile didn't waver. She set the tea on the nightstand. Of course, but that night, while Kwame slept, finally, deeply, Zahara crept back into the nursery. She opened the same bottle, pulled out a tiny paper sachet, and hid it under the baby's crib, just in case. If things went wrong, if anyone ever asked, if someone needed someone to blame. She'd already picked her scapegoat. Tiny, innocent, powerless. As she turned off the light, she looked at the monitor. It blinked. She didn't notice. She didn't know it had already started recording. Didn't know it was storing everything. Didn't know that something inside this house, at last, was watching her too. The plate shattered against the wall, exploding into ceramic dust inches from Imani's face. She didn't cry. She didn't blink. She stood still in the hallway, her tiny fingers clutching the stuffed rabbit missing one eye. The echo of Zahara's scream still hung in the air, jagged and burning, like smoke after a kitchen fire. Her voice had cracked in that particular way again, raw and deep, like something inside her had finally snapped loose and didn't care who heard. "I said don't touch that." Imani's lip quivered, but she didn't move. Her shoulders hunched, her bare feet trembling against the cool tile. Kwame had come home early, rain on his shoulders, a plastic bag of groceries in his left hand, tired lines under his eyes. He heard everything before he reached the door, heard the break, heard the shout, and then heard the silence. He dropped the bag. Eggs rolled across the porch. He opened the front door without knocking. The house was dim, just the low hum of the baby monitor from the hallway speaker, a faint buzzing static. He stepped inside slowly, each footfall deliberate, as though afraid the house might scream too. In the corner of the living room, Zahara stood with her back to him, one hand curled into a fist, the other gripping the edge of the dining chair. Her breath was sharp, fast. Her blouse was wrinkled, her hair frizzed at the ends. On the floor beside her, the broken plate lay in pieces. Across from her, Abeni stood frozen. Quam's voice was barely a whisper. "What the hell is going on?" Zahara spun. She blinked twice, quickly, then smiled. Too wide, too slow. She knocked over the bowl, she said, voice suddenly sweet again. It was nothing. "Kids, I heard you." He walked past her, lifted Abeni off the floor. The child buried her face into his neck. Her body trembled like a violin string stretched too tight. Zahara stepped forward, hands open. "Kwame, it's fine, I swear." "Don't." His voice was lower now, firmer. The silence that followed was deeper than before. That night he couldn't sleep. He sat on the edge of the bed, watching the soft blue light of the baby monitor pulse on the nightstand. Abeni had finally drifted off in the other room, tucked beneath the same yellow blanket Abeni once sewed. The house was still, but the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the kind of silence that waits for something to go wrong. Kwame picked up the monitor. He flipped the switch. A green light blinked on. Playback mode. He hadn't touched it in weeks, not since Abeni. His thumb hovered, then clicked. Static at first. White noise. The faint creak of the crib. Then Zahara's voice, low, too close to the mic. "If you ever tell anyone what I said, you'll never see the sun again." Abeni whimpered. Kwame froze. He fast-forwarded. Another night. Zahara again. "You think you're safe because you're small. You think your cries matter?" His breath caught. Another file more recent. "I didn't poison your mother for you to ruin this for me. She begged. And still, I did it." The room tilted. His hand clenched the monitor. He clicked again. "I put it in the tea, the powder, every night, right under his nose, and nobody knew. Not even him." His heart stopped. Zahara, her voice, calm, clear. A laugh followed. "I told you, everything that was hers is mine now." Kwame stumbled to his feet. He looked around the bedroom. The bookshelf, the scarf on the chair, Abeni's photo still hidden in the drawer. He pulled out his phone, shaking, hit record. He clicked the monitor again, replayed the last line. "I told you, everything that was hers is mine now." He saved the clip, saved another, then stood, went to the nursery. Abeni was asleep, her cheeks flushed from tears. He picked her up gently, held her against his chest. His hands covered her back like armor. She stirred. Her voice was small. "Daddy, I want Mama." He swallowed hard. "She's here," he whispered, pressing his lips to her forehead. "She's here." From the hallway, a floorboard creaked. Zahara's voice came like sugar over glass. "Is everything all right?" He turned. She stood in the shadows, hair wrapped in silk, robe tied too neatly. "Go back to bed," he said. She took a step forward. "I heard something." I said, "Go back to bed." His tone made her stop. Her fingers twitched. "Kwame," she said softly. "You're scaring me." He stared at her, saw through her. For the first time, she smiled again. Reflex. Then turned, walked away. But she didn't go to her room. She went to the kitchen. She opened the spice drawer. She opened the vitamin jar. She slipped something into her robe pocket, then walked into Abeni's room. Kwame had already turned the monitor to record. She didn't know. She whispered to herself while she moved around the room. "If I can't have peace, no one will." She reached under the crib. Her hand brushed the hidden sachet, but it was gone. Kwame had taken it. From the hallway, he watched her. His phone recording, the monitor recording. He stepped forward. She turned, stopped, eyes wide. "What are you doing?" he asked. Her hands clenched. "I was checking the baby. You were hiding something." "No." He stepped closer. Her smile cracked. His voice cracked too. "I heard what you said." She didn't deny it. She tilted her head. "You finally believe me now?" Silence. A breath. Then she lunged. He caught her by the wrist. The phone hit the ground, but the monitor stayed on, still blinking, still listening, still saving everything. He pushed her back, picked up Imani, didn't say a word, just walked out. Zahara stood alone, panting, watching him leave. The air in the room was thick, heavy. The storm outside had started again, rain pounding on the windows. The baby monitor blinked once, then again, and in the stillness that followed, the house remembered every word. The room went silent the moment the audio started playing. At first, people thought it was part of the slideshow, a glitch in the speakers or a stray recording left behind from the caterer's playlist. The music had just ended. Glasses still clinked. Someone had just raised a toast. Laughter still hung midair like perfume. Then the voice came, Zahara's voice, and everything froze. "I put it in the tea. Every night." The powder dissolved quickly. She never noticed a thing. It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a confession. It was cold, clear, matter of fact. Someone dropped their fork. The room had been warm seconds ago. Soft lighting, silk table runners, gold-rimmed plates, a family gathering that felt more like a magazine spread than a real evening. Now it felt like the air had cracked. The large screen behind the dessert table dimmed. The lights didn't go out, but it felt like they should have. Zahara stood near the center table, a wine glass halfway to her lips, a polite smile already frozen mid-face. Then the next sentence played. I watched her drink it. I watched her body fall apart. No one moved. No one breathed. Zahara's hand trembled just enough to make the wine ripple. She turned toward Kwame. He was standing at the head of the room, not smiling, not speaking, just holding his phone up, speaker aimed directly into the heart of the silence. Imani stood beside him, her small hand wrapped around his pant leg. Her braids were neat, her dress pink with a white bow, and her eyes, they weren't confused, they weren't scared, they were waiting. Zahara opened her mouth, but the next line came faster. I didn't poison her for fun. I did it for him, for us, for everything she never appreciated. Gasps erupted. A chair scraped back. Someone whispered, Dear God. Zahara stepped forward. Wait, this isn't what you think. Kwame didn't lower the phone. Another clip. I told her I'd take care of Imani, and I am, in my own way. Zahara's face went pale. She laughed once, sharp and forced. This is therapy. It was a session, a role play, that's all. The baby was crying, and I was pretending. Enough. Kwam's voice shattered through her sentence. You said those words when you thought no one was listening. I was helping her cope. Post-traumatic rehearsal. It's a therapeutic model. The monitor doesn't lie. He turned his phone off, another hand raised from the back. An officer, uniformed, silent until now. Zahara Musa? Her mouth opened, closed. Everyone turned. You're under investigation for the suspected poisoning of Abeni Nwosu. No, the word slipped out before she could think. You're mistaken. The officer stepped forward. We have enough probable cause to search the premises. Zahara's breath hitched. Another officer followed, hand outstretched, holding a plastic evidence bag. Inside, an unmarked sachet. Another, labeled vitamins, found beneath the crib, found in her drawer, found in her robe pocket. Zahara shook her head, faster now. This isn't mine, someone's setting me up. Her voice cracked. They're all lying, they've always been against me. You said everything yourself, Kwame cut in. Those clips, those could be fake. AI, deep fakes. You think this family didn't resent me after she died? You think they didn't want me gone? You weren't content with gone, he said. You wanted her erased. The audience didn't blink. Even the children had stopped whispering. Zahara took a breath, then another, then laughed. This time longer. I did it for love. She looked at him now, straight into his eyes. For you. I loved you enough to make space for us. The officer stepped forward again. You need to come with us. You don't understand, Zahara pleaded. She didn't love him right. She took him for granted. I watched it. I fixed it. Kwam took Imani in his arms. Zahara's voice rose, unhinged. I did this for you. He didn't answer, just turned and walked away. The click of the handcuffs echoed against the marble. The sound Zahara made wasn't human. It was a choke, a scream, a plea. It bounced off the chandelier and fell onto deaf ears. Someone in the crowd cried. Someone else clapped once, then stopped. Zahara twisted, wild. You loved me once? No, Kwame said without looking back. I loved the lie you told. The officers pulled her through the crowd. Her face streaked with sweat, not tears. No one reached for her. No one stood. No one helped. Outside, the police car door slammed shut. The silence left in her absence was deafening. Inside, someone turned off the music. The party was over. Kwame stood at the edge of the garden, holding Imani close. She looked up at him. Was she bad? He exhaled. She was lost. The girl blinked. Is Mama still watching us? He didn't answer, but in the tree above them, wind moved the branches gently, like a hand waving. Somewhere a flower bloomed early, too soon, too bright, too bold, and yet it stayed. The judge's gavel hit the bench with a dull crack that echoed down to the bones. Outside, camera shutters clicked in sync like automatic gunfire. Reporters jostled for position behind the courthouse railing, microphones raised like daggers. The headlines were already being typed. Poisoned by her best friend. The final verdict in the Zahara Musa trial. Inside the courtroom, the air didn't move. It hung thick, metallic, like blood before it clots. Zahara stood behind the defense table, wrists shackled. Her eyes were smudged with fatigue, but not remorse. Her dress suit had lost its shape over the course of the trial, creased at the shoulder, stained beneath the collar. Her lips were chapped from hours of silence. Across from her, Kwame sat stone still. Imani on his lap, arms wrapped around his forearm like a vine searching for anchor. Her shoes barely touched the floor. The jury foreman cleared her throat. Her voice came out too loud in the hush. On the charge of premeditated murder through toxic administration, we find the defendant guilty. Zahara blinked. Once. No tears, no collapse, no gasp, just a slow, almost imperceptible smile that curled only one corner of her mouth. The judge didn't hesitate. The sentence had been negotiated behind closed doors the day before. Life in prison, no parole, not death, not here, but close. Stillness returned, then murmurs, whispers like dry leaves in a windless room. A shuffle of movement. Zahara turned her head toward Kwame. She said nothing, but her eyes said everything. You were mine. The bailiff took her elbow. She didn't resist, didn't look back. The door shut behind her. Kwame didn't exhale until Imani turned to him and whispered, Is it over now? He looked down. Almost. 2 weeks passed. The courthouse emptied of press. The neighbors stopped pretending not to gossip. But something shifted in the air, a ripple that moved through the streets and markets. The story spread not just as tragedy, but as reckoning. The story of a woman killed by her own sister in heart. The story of a child who lived, one morning, early, when the sun had barely lifted above the rooftops and the streets were still silver with dew. They dug her up. Abeni. The order had come quietly, signed by a judge requested by the state forensic pathologist, under sealed motion. Kwame stood there, arms folded as the white tents were set up and the gloves were pulled on. The earth was darker than he remembered, wetter. He didn't cry, not when they opened the casket, not when they scraped samples from her nails, her scalp, her blood-starved tissue. But later that night, holding the final toxicology report in his hands, he wept soundlessly at the kitchen table. The report confirmed what he already knew: oleander, traces, hair, fingernails, liver, days, weeks, slow, untraceable death. The poison had done its job cleanly, quietly, like a thief, like a friend. He placed the report beside her old recipe book, didn't say a word. Imani started kindergarten that fall. She drew pictures of trees with purple leaves, told her teacher she could hear butterflies whisper if she was very still. Some nights, she slept with her head under the pillow and whispered secrets into the mattress. Other nights, she curled up next to Kwame and said nothing at all. One day, she wrote a letter to her mama. She folded it carefully, drew a heart on the envelope, and buried it under the rose bush where Abeni used to hum and prune. She said it was safer that way, because angels read roots. The old neighbor from across the street, the one who had once praised Abeni's bravery, watched her from his front porch. His bones creaked in the cold. His eyes were fogged, but sharp enough to see the girl for who she really was, a survivor. He leaned back in his chair, murmured under his breath, "Light always finds its way back." Zahara. The city school invited Imani to speak at a child protection awareness event. She was only 5, but she stood on a box behind the podium with a little red headband and a calmness that didn't match her age. She didn't tell the story, not all of it, just the part about voices and how important it was to listen when someone said they were scared, even if they said it without words, even if they said it in drawings, or in silence, or in the way they held their breath. After her speech, there was applause, real, full. In the crowd, a woman wept behind dark sunglasses. The old neighbor sat in the back, his hand on his cane, his chest rising slowly. He didn't clap. He just whispered to no one. "That's what I hoped for. That's what I feared would never come." Then he smiled. That evening, the sun fell slow and soft behind the cemetery wall. Petals scattered across the path like someone had dropped a bouquet and never came back for it. Kwame stood in front of the stone. It had been updated. Abeni Nwosu, beloved daughter, beloved wife, beloved mother. Justice, at last, has spoken your name. Imani stood beside him. No tears, just the wind catching the edge of her dress. Kwame reached into his pocket, pulled out a thin gold chain, the one Abeni had worn the week she died. He knelt, pressed it into the soil just under the inscription, then stood. Imani's hand slipped into his. They didn't say goodbye, just turned and walked down the hill. The wind picked up, leaves rustled in the high branches, and somewhere in the distance someone closed a window. But nothing could close what had been opened, not anymore. In the quiet after every storm, there comes a moment, a pause so still it almost feels sacred. It's in that stillness we begin to understand what we've endured. Sometimes, the deepest wounds are not the ones we see, but the ones we carry quietly in the folds of memory, in whispered fears, in the silence of empty rooms, in the things we never had the chance to say. This was a story not only about betrayal and heartbreak, but also about resilience, the kind that doesn't shout, but holds on, the kind that grows slowly, like roots beneath stone. It reminds us that the darkest intentions can wear the gentlest masks, and that love, no matter how sincere, can be used as both weapon and shield. But truth, no matter how buried, will always find its way to the surface. And when it doesn't just expose, it frees. There are people in this world who will use kindness as a disguise, who will stand close, not to lift us up, but to pull us down quietly. Yet even in those shadows we find moments of light, small hands reaching back for hope, voices learning how to speak again, eyes refusing to forget what they've seen. Because justice is not always loud. Sometimes it comes in the quiet determination to remember, to heal, to rebuild. And perhaps the most human truth of all is this: healing doesn't mean erasing the pain. It means holding it gently, making room for it, letting it teach us who we are and who we will never become. If this story has moved you, even just a little, thank you for listening with an open heart. Every view, every comment, every shared thought matters more than you know. So take a moment, leave your reflections below, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and stay close for more stories that ask us to feel deeply, question gently, and believe fiercely in the quiet strength of truth. We're honored to have had you here, and we'll be waiting on the next journey. Until then, keep the light on.